Hey, so I want to talk about nonviolence, laws and rules, uh, and how they don't. There's no equality or equanimity in many of the laws which are natural, which are based on natural law, but don't apply equally. So this is where bullying in school there can be no equanimity. So you go bully somebody, and they fight back, and the person who's bullied, oftentimes they won't fight back. But if they do fight back, they're somehow they're at fault for drawing bullies to them. Uh, that's that conservative, uh, you know, and also conservative and the insanity behind liberal philosophy. Some of the liberal philosophy, which is basically conservative philosophy. Like we have in the media, we have Chuck Todd calling Bernie supporters, Bernie voters, uh, brown shirts, which is basically what the Nazis did, and what the brown shirts during the time of slavery in the United States. The brown shirts went around and basically did what the Nazis did. For those who supported, lifting slavery and giving everybody equality. And then there was the Pinkertons and all sorts of others who basically did what the Nazis did. But as I said, laws and rules don't, while they may be based on natural law, don't apply equally. There's no equanimity oftentimes. Um, but this has been propagandized and basically pounded in just about every friggin' thing that you can think of. Whenever you watch a TV show about bullying, or you're walking down the street and some people come up and they beat the ever living crap out of you and take your money, but if you fight back, it's if you fight back and you hurt them bad, somehow the person who's there to rob you and beat you down, somehow, or groups, usually groups, somehow you're the one in the wrong. So, and this is where the conservatives ideology in this country, why conservatives often get the benefit of the doubt, while those who are on the left, really on the left, not the liberals, but the ones that are truly on the left, uh, you know, we have we are not given equanimity in that. The rules and laws do not apply equally. And if you're a minority, then it definitely doesn't apply. If you're an indigenous person, definitely doesn't apply. The media, whether you're Fox or MSNBC or CNN or ABC or NBC or CBS or whatever, or what have you, New York Times, Los Angeles Times, Washington Post, uh, they can trash talk along with, they can talk, trash talk and basically say the most horrendous things. And the right wing media, whether they're people like Ben Shapiro or the radio conservative pundits, like not Lou Dobbs. What the hell is his name? He recently got a Medal of Honor. Uh, so I think you start to get my point. They, you got the Daily Wire, you got the Daily Stormer, you got all these places. So they can basically say the most horrendous things, but you come around and say it back, and yours is based on actual truth, and somehow you're the snowflake or you're the violent one. So this is the problem. Why this is the reason why I do a lot of videos about about using using violence, because there's no such thing as non-violence. When the violence is being done onto you and you can't do it yourself, that's not non-violence. When violent words, I mean, they're violent, are thrown at you and you can't throw it back, that's violence. The right wing have always used violence, which is why the Republicans and the Democrats fear the right wing, because they have all the guns and they have millions of them, and they've shown over and over and over again that they're willing to use them. So politicians, I mean, we've all seen the mafia and organized crime shows and movies, right? Where the mafia boss or somebody in organized crime that's high, they basically send messages to the judge or the DA or people on the people who are there to uh, there to that's who are brought in to bring down a verdict and so on and so forth, and how their families are used, or their friends, or their girlfriends, or their loved ones. Somebody's used to make them vote a certain way or come to a verdict in a certain way. This is the reason why nonviolence is not a thing. There's always violence, and it's usually one side using it against the other. So the whole philosophy is flawed. If there was equanimity, where your skin color or your ethnic background or your philosophical and philosophical standing and ideology is on the left, then I wouldn't have an issue with it. Then it would be truly nonviolence. But that's not the case. It has never been the case. It has always been like that historically. This is the reason why I respect Noam Chomsky. I really do. But I completely and utterly disagree with him on the nonviolence aspect, because there's no equanimity. And while Gandhi and others have gotten a lot of clout for this the simple fact of the matter is that hundreds, if not thousands, of those who are rational, who follow natural law, who don't, who don't, uh, who follow the rules that are set, which are not equal, end up paying physically, emotionally, financially, socially. That's violence. So if there's equality, equanimity in it, then yes. But that is not the case. That is not the case. It has never been the case. And the reason why the left has always been under the thumb of a minority group, it's because the majority, the plural majority, we don't speak with force. We don't show force. And we tend to tolerate such things. Now, could it be cowardice? It could be. It could be. But it's mostly because our mindset, we lack this critical understanding, critical thinking. You know, we'll buy into the trope, but that we need to be stern, and forceful, and do even do some minor amount of punishment when we're bringing up our children. We'll buy that, but we forget that if you're not thinking critically, if you're acting like a child, even though you're 60, 70, 80, or 50, or 40 years old, or 30 years old, then you are still a child. You are not an adult if you cannot think critically, if you cannot see natural law. You're a child and you're doing temper tantrums, and you're being a violent temper tantrum within the body, within the physical body of what we term grown-ups. Yes, do we make mistakes? But most of us on the left, the true left, don't 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 do things out of on a regular basis. We don't do it out of malicious intent, because that is the case. Or we like to be fair, we like to be informed, and we like to give the benefit of the doubt. And that's a problem. You can give benefit of the doubt if you can talk to the person and you can start poking holes into their ideology, into their thinking. And if they're willing to listen, that's great. But if their whole agenda is to do violence at the drop of a hat, whether it's to take money from you or to take a loved one from you, or to put you in your place, that's you're just not gonna change their mind. We know that the ultra right wing, who are racist, misogynist, sexist, homophobic, and xenophobic, those who own a ton of weapons and are more than willing to use them. Uh, it's been said constantly, especially on the progressive left media, on progressive left social media. They say those you won't be able to change. They're the ones that are going to be hardcore backing. Unfortunately, it's not just the ultra right that will do it. There are plenty of conservatives, not for all of the above, but for a mix, a nuance of reasons, and because conservative the so-called Western conservatism gives them a feeling of license, of privilege and entitlement, that and it's become natural for them to think in those terms. Why? Because they've been brought up that way. And most conservatives can't really change. And the right wing can't really change, no matter what truth, what facts you throw at them. No matter what, if they see it in person, they can't empathize. They can't show compassion because they don't see a need to, because they've been brought up that way. And if you understand neurophysiology and how the brain makes permanent neural connections from learned condition, it's incredibly difficult for even people on the left to break that. For any person, it's incredibly difficult, if not almost impossible, which is the proper word, be improbable. But that's the case. That's the case. The right wing and the vast majority of conservatives and the neoliberals, they can't change. But one of the things that does impact the change is fear. It's pain. That and trauma does work, because I've had a traumatic childhood. I've had a traumatic life. And the thing is I've come to understand empathy and compassion because I've experienced it. Because I've had to face the fear and the pain. Because of that, I can empathize. I can show compassion because I understand it. I also know what is right and what is wrong. I'll give you a prime example of what I mean. When I used to live in Massachusetts, there's a city called Brockton. So I was in a CVS in Brockton, and a young white man came in, and he started to violently and verbally harass the staff at the CVS. And he was starting to go towards the night manager, which was a woman. And I stepped in, and I used forceful words, and I took a fighting stance because I was ready to defend her. Now, he left, but he came back with a knife. And the thing is the only reason he left was because we had already, the CVS had already called the cops, and the cops were coming. And we let him know that. So that fear condition of possibly going to jail or being killed changed it broke his thinking. He was ready to use lethal force, but that fear stopped him. I was standing there, and I told him when he came in with that knife. I said to him, "If you don't kill me right here with that knife of yours, I'm gonna kill you." So it was between my very forceful and deadpan delivery and the fear of the cops and him possibly getting killed that drove him to stop his train of thought, his actions towards violence and trying to intimidate. Now you can call it cowardice, you can call it anything, but there was a real world sense that it could have very well happened. And this is what I mean about using violence. We need to apply an equal violence and a willingness to stand up for ourselves and for others. That is what it means to be on the left. That is what it means to be empathetic. That is what it means to have compassion. And no matter what philosophical mumbo jumbo may be put to it, it is that philosophical mumbo jumbo that keeps us where we are, that has allowed a few to control the many, to steal from us, to rob from us, to extort from us, to hoard everything, to put us in jail, or deport us if we're trying to get into the country, so that we can find some safety. It is what has allowed them to do this corporate and governmental colonialism. This is how they can do regime change, by using sanctions, which affects people in a violent way, because it makes sure that they can't get medicine, they can't get food, they can't get anything. And it's not the people, the vast majority of people that live in the U.S. or the West who benefit. It's a small, extremely small minority who benefits in all the physical material ways. And they are the biggest. They are the biggest arbitrators and contributors to violence throughout the entire world. So we got to stop thinking in terms, and we must take it by a case basis. And that's that vast minority, extremely vast minority. I know it's oxymoronic, say vast, but metaphorically speaking, we must demonstrate a willingness to stand up for ourselves, for our community, and inequity in nonviolence and free speech. The so-called free speech is not equality. And there is no liberty involved for those who have to keep taking it on the chin, who have to keep dying, who have to keep going to jail, keep being oppressed and suppressed, where the violence is done by a small minority on the vast majority. So if you think you follow the right, if you think you're labeled right, not the ultra right, but the right or the conservatives, or the very right leaning liberal, and you're not a social psychopath, and you can think more clearly and critically, and this makes sense, this is what we all need to do. Because violence done by a small minority to get all the physical, material advantages and wealth and influence and privilege, that's how we get to a point where the world is where everybody in the world, including the rest of all the other rest of life, such as the animals, the plants, the everything else. That's how we get a system where we all suffer and we all pay for every life which is oppressed and suppressed and killed and jailed and destroyed. It should impact us personally. It should hurt us personally because we are a global community, and a global community must think critically, must have this thought, because nonviolence does not work. If nonviolence worked, then India would not now be run by right wing people. If nonviolence worked, then we wouldn't have dictators. And dictators is not a singular thing. You can't dictate singularly. You must have an infrastructure. You must have allies. Every government, every so-called government that's a dictatorship, has the backing, has the infrastructure. And that is a small minority who are willing to use violence of every sort, who are willing to ignore truth, who are willing to do everything to keep their physical material wealth and influence. It has never worked. It will never work until we come to understand that violence is part of existence. And a show of violence, a potential for violence, will bring equality and equanimity and give us liberty and justice for all. Thank you.